Okay. Hey, what do you think of Genesis 2? Do you like it? First question. Second
I'm for it.
question. Do you
I'm
believe
in
it?
favor. I believe it with all my heart. And in fact, I wish I could believe it more. Right? So you get this clarity about who we are and what we're for that is lost in the world today. Genesis 2 does not allow you to be a self-made man. You are a creature, and your relationships are formed by God, right? So Jesus glosses Genesis 2, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. Jesus glosses it and says, what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. Right? So God's the one who's doing the creating and the joining.
That's great. I mean, so Colossians and certainly John 1, right? Like everything in creation has been made through Jesus Christ. Right? So like not a generic God. Like you're absolutely right. So when you say God, I know what you mean, but this is the logos. This is the triune God. Right? And this is our bold claim on every single human being who's ever been born. It's like you were created through Christ. Now the tragedy is you might not know that. Right?
Do you think that observation is universally relevant? So what I mean to say is that the trouble that people encounter in their lives, the difficulties, the things that they're frustrated with, their sorrow, misery, whatever it might be, that you could attribute that to largely a failure to recognize that they are creatures, that they are under God's sovereignty.
100%. And I don't know if this is like too cute of me saying this or not, but like I was saying it yesterday and I really like it. It's like you can't know yourself. You can't be at peace with yourself until you know the God in whose image you've been created. Like that makes a ton of sense to me. And I think that's where the cognitive dissonance comes.
Right. Yeah, and it is really we were talking last time about the resurrection, the historicity of the resurrection being essential for establishing the integrity of the scriptures. You could say that this diagnosis, this anthropological diagnosis, is the apologetic for like why you need somebody outside of you, why there has to be a God who created you and informs you about who you are, right? There has to be.
Right, we need a transcendent reality, right? And the problem with modern man is that we've made ourselves the transcendent reality. So we've eliminated God, and we thought that was a promotion, but what it ended up meaning is that we eliminated meaning. So this is Nietzsche.
So why is it that we could imagine that we could do without the transcendent? Where does that come from? I'm thinking about how if you just spend any time looking at the world around you and your own experience. So, back up to a time when things were simpler and you depended entirely on the rain to make the grass grow and feed your livestock, right? You knew your limitations. Where does this gall come from? that by which we imagine that we can do without that.
I've got one word for you. It starts with the C.
Concupiscence.
That's right. I mean, yeah, the Lutherans are right. It's a lot of syllables, but I mean, it's true, right? I mean, it's like these things are so simple. Like obviously the answer is sin. Now you could diagnose that, right? We don't need to be trite with it, but like, yeah, you're right. It's like the children get it because they're like, there is something outside of me that needs to take care of me, right? So this is the childlike faith, and then you grow up. So the key is retain the childlike faith, but don't become childish.
Yeah, that's good. And that fits with questions we might ask about what's going on in Genesis 2, say with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? So Adam and Eve are children, and this is great. It's a glorious thing, being whatever, 1 day old. It's fantastic. That's the prime of life, isn't it?
How old did they look? This is my this gets the people thinking. They're like, wait, what? Like, because they're they're infants. Now, I think we disagree about this. That's fine. But I take Jesus or God's command, be fruitful and multiply, comes with the assumption that they are able to do so right then and there. Because my thing is,
why do you think we disagree about this?
because you said this at Winkle back in December, so maybe you've changed your mind in 3 months. So you didn't think it necessarily came with the assumption that they were able to procreate right then and there.
It's just not fair that you can remember absolutely everything I say. It's not.
Well, most of what you say is not that interesting. So
there you go. Just sit through the stuff. Okay. Yeah. So maybe. Okay. I still stand by that. I don't think it's necessary. Although I could see how it makes sense. How about that? I'll grant you that.
Okay. Because here's my big thing. It's like if God tells us to do something, like He's going to give us the ability to do it. Now there would be an interesting conversation here about the law, right? So definitely like the Pauline thing, and we're all sorts of confused about the law. I think so. We could tease that out. This could go in a million different directions, but I think here in Genesis 2, or no, it's not even in Genesis 2, right? It's Genesis.
End of 1.
It's the end of 1 talking about Genesis 1:28 being fruitful and to multiply. I mean the timeline here is we don't have a clear timeline. So I mean Luther thinks that they sin like on the first day, right? That they're like so on the 7th day on that Sabbath, or like within a week. Now there could be more time.
So right. What use is the time? What use would the time be? It doesn't really. It's not necessary. I'm just thinking about how the options in front of them are obedience or disobedience, and so Gerhardt describes the condition of man's will before the fall as capable of sin, not yet confirmed in goodness, So it's like you need the test, but there's no preparation for the test. It's not like studying up. They're going to figure out, after some experience, this is the right answer to the question, right? It may as well be imminent.
Okay, sure. So talking about the tree then, this immaturity growing up, like this is what's going to lead them to maturity, and I think we agree on this. So tease this out. The tree of knowledge is actually good because God looks at it and says it's good, right? So it's a part of His creation, right? So the first thing He says is every tree is available for you to eat, right? So there's the universal thing there. And then next sentence, except for this one tree. So it starts with the universal, but then He starts to limit it back. And my favorite parallel for this is dietary restrictions, specifically pork. So it's like you can eat anything, but Israelites, not pork, not until Christ comes. So, tree of knowledge, you can't eat it yet until you're ready for it. And this comes with knowledge. So knowledge without wisdom, without maturity, is dangerous. So nuclear knowledge, you know how to build a bomb, but you're not wise. That's a pretty dangerous thing.
Yeah. I'm thinking about this passage I just read yesterday or the day before. Yesterday, I guess it was, in Hebrews 5, where Paul is. I take it. Do you think it's Paul? I think it's Paul. In Hebrews 5,
I think it's Paul because most of church history thought it was.
It also sounds like him. It sounds like him. So here, second half of the chapter, this warning against apostasy, and the criticism is you ought to be more mature than you are. This is so good. It's like you know so many things. You should be more mature. You should be moving on. And there's so much fun stuff to talk about here. Like he wants them to next move on from the elementary doctrine, right? But here, you ought to be in a condition where you're the teachers and conveying the oracles of God to other people. You need milk, though, because you're not mature, not solid food. For everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, and this is the connection to Genesis 2. For those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil. So it is becoming of the mature to distinguish between good and evil. Now, there's a question in my mind about whether this maturity is maturity the maturity that comes with sanctification, or So the it's maturity that is attendant with crucifying the old man, right? Is what's on the table here have only to do with because you're sinners redeemed, or is this just a general principle that distinguishing good and evil, like Solomon praying for a listening heart so that he can discern good and evil, is that something that belongs only to the mature? Is that what maturity is, actually?
Yeah, I would go with the option where, so God made Adam and Eve perfect and yet not complete, right? You get that distinction. Although it does get confused because the word telos comes to mind, right? Like we use that in Greek for both perfect and complete, but they are different things, right? And this gets the whole marriage thing about in heaven you will be like the angels. So their confirmation process happens a whole lot quicker than ours.
Right.
And you're looking to do away with confirmation, which, all power to you. You get the joke? Okay.
I do, yes. Well, okay. It's actually really related because what is it that you are confirming? This is the question, right? So what needs to be confirmed for Adam and Eve is actually the same thing that we want to confirm among people in our congregations, that they trust in God, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Right. So the Adam, so the angels, they're confirmed sometime in the first 6 days, right? Whenever Satan's rebellion was, and I firmly believe Isaiah 12, right, talking about the star, morning star, somewhere around there, and then
I think you're right.
And then Revelation 12 took a third of the stars with him, right? So that rebellion happens sometime in the first 6 days, and then from that moment they're confirmed either in goodness or blessedness or evil, and that's comforting, right? Like no good angel can go bad now. And so here's another thing. People are like, well, is it really freedom if in heaven we can't choose to fall again? It's like, yeah, like I don't want the ability to fall again.
Right. This is also, when you think about it, it's a silly objection because, of course, God can't do evil things, and he's the one perfectly free being, right?
That's yeah. Augustine says this in The City of God. He's like, you don't think God is free because he can't do evil? Like that's so silly, right? And that's great. So it's freedom from sin, right? Freedom to do good, and that's how we'll be in heaven. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about you, but I'm with Paul on this one. It's like, yeah, life is good, and God needs me here right now, so we're gonna do the best work we can. But I'd rather be with Christ in heaven.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean this will come up in chapter 3 in Genesis. But what is it that's so tempting about listening to the devil's words that makes temporal and fallen things seem to supersede the goodness of not being able to sin, and consequently being free from misery, free from sorrow, free from unrighteousness. Yeah.
Yeah. This is back to our epistemological conversation last week about how you can know something, because I think really it has to do with the senses. So because the fruit of the tree of knowledge looks good, right? You can see it. They couldn't see God at that moment, and I think that's what it is. It's like you can't see these things right now, right? But a time is coming when we see in a mirror dimly lit right now, but then when he returns, we'll see it face to face. So I really do think it has to do with sight. We're so easily entranced by what we can see right before our faces.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the potential hierarchy, or the hierarchy there between sight and hearing, and how anybody would choose really sight over hearing if they had the choice.
And this pops up over and over from Genesis to Revelation. So you think about the beast who looks like Christ, right? But he has the voice of a dragon.
Sure.
So he looks like the shepherd, but his voice is different. So you have to, and this is what Jesus says in John 10, right? Like, my sheep know my voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the only ruse that the devil can accomplish is masquerading by appearance as an angel of light, right? So he can alter his appearance, but he can't change the sound of his voice or the words that he says, right? Yeah. Huh.
Right. That's good. You want to talking about trees. Okay, this is great. Let's do a shift here. We are binary creatures. Okay, so there's two trees, right? There's two sexes. There are two stones that get mentioned in Genesis 2 verse 12, bdellium and onyx, and we know that bdellium is white because in Numbers 11 it's described as the color of manna, of coriander seed, right? So it's a white stone, and then onyx is black, and then these things occur in Revelation. Again, kind of wild how much these things just everything in the Bible can find its root in Genesis 1 to 3. But we're binary creatures, so you gotta have to have one or the other, and so this fits right in with our discussion of what truth is. So you have the truth, and then everything that's opposed to that is a lie. And we are totally rejecting this in our world today. We're like, we just want everything to be the same. Do you see this, the homogeneity of a lot of things?
Yeah, the great flattening of everything. Right. So you describe everything on a spectrum, or a gradient, instead of having two poles that are discrete. That's interesting. I'm just thinking about how there's this frustrating phenomenon in chemistry. Remember this from chemistry? That the different subatomic particles, the electrons and the protons, they exist in these valences where they skip from one quantum to the next. There's no in between. It's either, right? And so you get, and in fact, like in the subatomic structure of the world, you get these things that are either up or down. There's no like skewed. It's either up or down, right? Positive or negative. There's no in between. It's built into the nature of the world. Yeah.
Sure. And are there 7 different types of quarks? Am I remembering that right?
That's beyond me, but I think you might be right.
Well, I mean, the only thing I remember from chemistry is that a mole is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd power.
That's pretty good.
That was a long time ago.
But do you remember what a mole is? What is it a measure of?
The CIA.
I don't remember either. It's like, what is it? It's the number of well, anyways.
It's some reoccurring, I don't know. We're not paleontologists, as you learned last week, and we're not chemists.
I'm gonna Google it. By the way, I looked that up. So Sue the T-Rex is 90% complete.
But it's like a lot smaller than we think, right? Like the picture.
40 meters long or something like that.
Oh, that's not even half. Well, maybe that is.
Maybe it was 40 feet, but yeah.
Oh, okay. It's like, yeah, get off
the number of atoms in 12 grams of carbon-12. That's what a mole is. The number of atoms in 12 grams of carbon.
That doesn't mean anything to me.
Perfect. Okay. So, anyways, binary. You got two stones, the black and white. You got two trees. You got two sexes. What else?
And then you're gonna have two stones in the ephod with the stones of judgment there, and we see this play out later in Genesis with Isaac. He's like, you got two sons, right? I mean, that story keeps replaying over and over and over again too. So two sons. It really starts with Adam and then Jesus. I mean, but that's like that's the inclusio of the whole thing, because obviously the Son of God is eternal. But then Adam's got two sons, Abel and Cain. Abraham, he's got two sons, right? I mean, one of them's illegitimate, but he's got two sons, and then obviously the twins of Isaac and Isaac has got Esau and Jacob, and then well, Jacob's got 12 sons, but there's a lot of pairs going on there. So, and of course, Jesus tells the parable. A man had two sons, and parable of the prodigal son. That parable starts off, a man had two sons. So, yeah, whenever anybody says they're non-binary, it's a rejection of God's design. What you got?
Well, Jacob's got two wives, so that's how you can get out of the 12 sons bit.
Well,
Two
and
wives.
two more concubines. So there
Right.
are
That's right.
there are four mothers. Interestingly, Rachel, right, the one legitimate wife, she's got two sons, right, and dies giving birth to the second. Oh, glad you brought that up. So talking about marriage and sacrifice, thinking about Jacob giving up 7 years. I read this. This is harrowing. This is encouraging. Like, we are called to lay down our lives for our wives, and speaking of the transcendent, like we are called to die for our wives. Doesn't that give you purpose? Like, doesn't that
It
make you want to run
does.
through a wall?
My wife is always pointing out that we act as though wives submit to your husbands. That's the burdensome word in Ephesians 5. When she's like, no. The hard one is husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church, right? Who gave himself up for her. That's right. And in fact, I mean, it's that willingness to sacrifice that leads to willing submission, right? So this is the archetype in Christ. If he was not willing to sacrifice himself, we would have no object for our faith. It's that willing sacrifice that leads us, that softens our stony hearts so that we then submit to him, right?
Yeah, yeah. And he was willing to do it. Like, I love these verses in Revelation, and then Paul has it about him being slain before the foundation of the world. It's this idea that, like, the price of creation is, like, God's own blood. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Before Adam ever gives up his side, right, his rib for Eve, like, God had already determined that his son was going to give up his life for his bride, the church.
People always ask that as though it's kind of a confounding thing. Why would God do it if he knew what was going to happen? But instead, as you're describing it, it's like, isn't it amazing that he did it knowing what was going to happen, right? So I was thinking about this with Peter denying Jesus 3 times. You know, not often, but occasionally Jesus actually lets you know what exactly you're going to do, and then you do it. And he does. Think about the contrast here. This might be my Maundy Thursday sermon, actually. The contrast is between you and me, who, like, if I saw something coming, it's like, Josh, if you do this thing, right? If you say that, what's something stupid you're going to do, and then you do it, and you get yourself into a world of trouble about it, I'm going to say, I told you so, and I'm kind of going to relish the misery that you're experiencing. But, like, Jesus does these things. He knows what's going to happen, and he knows what we're going to do, not to relish the misery, but so that his mercy, so that, like, in some sense you can say, nothing you do is going to surprise him. Like, it's all plain, and he's prepared ahead of time to show mercy. It's otherworldly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it hurts him, but he's willing to go through it.
Yeah, right. Which, there you go. You know, that's back to the invigorating outlook on being a husband. Right? This is actually what you're called to do for your wife. Nothing less than that. Nothing short of that, really.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so God tells Adam it's not good for man to be alone, and so we've talked, like, all these things have their root in God. So here's my thought: it's not good for Adam to be alone because it's not good for God to be alone, and this really gets to the doctrine of the Trinity.
Yeah, like Father, like Son, right? Same deal. And you know, why is it that we have children, right? Because it is not good for us to be alone. So you get married because it's not good for you to be alone. Why do you create another human being? Because what would it? I mean, community is an overdrawn word. I don't like community too much, but what would it be? What's a better word for it? Maybe it is just community.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with vocabulary changes as long as we explain it. We can use the words. Well, so, like, Paul will say in Ephesians, it's like every father in heaven and on earth is named after God, right? And Chesterton says that God, if you properly understand it, is a family because he is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So you have the perfect unity there, and so because God is one, right? But he's also got perfect diversity. So he's a plurality. So this is the great mystery. And Paul's like in Ephesians 5, I'm talking about marriage, but I'm really talking about God. So we have to see all these things as revelations of who God is.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how important that is. The philosophers get so close, right? They try so hard, and they can discern. They look at the world more clearly than people nowadays do, right? So for instance, there's a denial that there's any order to the world right now. Well, if you're a pre-Socratic philosopher, you're like, no, clearly there's a unity that underlies everything. There's something behind everything, but you can't understand the fact that that unity actually needs diversity along with it, right? So everything devolves into a monad if you're a pre-Socratic, and that's really boring. I mean, Aristotle gets so many things right, but it's just it's so cold and lifeless because there's nothing beyond just the prime mover. There he is, just existing, right?
So you're more of a Platonist.
I am, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about dualism. I'm not prepared to do so, but like again, everything's on a binary. So like I'm not totally like opposed to the idea. I absolutely can't stand it when people are like, when we say we're body and soul, that's somehow like we're subscribing to Plato. It's like, well, what if Plato actually happened to be right? It's like, how does Paul talk about the human being? Always like body, soul, and spirit. I don't think he got it from Plato. I think he got it from God.
Sure.
I told you this conversation I had with a professor at St. Cloud State. He's a Roman Catholic philosopher, but he's like, I think we're just material beings, like the soul is made up. And I was like, how do you do with Paul then? And his answer was, well, I think Paul was a Neoplatonist and he was wrong. It's like we are operating on a different fundamental understanding of what the Bible is then. But I'm glad you said it. So.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing. It's like you were describing. I listened to your sermon from last night, right? The problem with the Stoics is that they are joyless, right? They what did you say? They won't wish you a happy birthday. They'll just say it's your birthday, and
right.
because so again, here's another word I don't like, but tension, right? There's this tension between these things, and it's our creaturely limitation, and of course our sinful flesh that prevents us from seeing how two things can be true at the same time, right? So one God, three persons. It's confounding, and it is not an answer that any philosophy can arrive at. But it is when you presuppose it, right? When you presuppose it, it makes sense of everything, right? It opens up the whole world.
Yeah, this is great. And Chesterton talks this way too about like you got two eyeballs, so it really takes the binary, right? You need two eyes to really see things for how they really are. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good.
Why don't you tell me? You got a note here about the Four Rivers and Eden as a mountain. Tell me what you got going on there. What's that about?
Oh, sure. So you got four rivers flowing out of a central place, and geographically, the only way this makes sense is if Eden is uphill, right? Because rivers flow down. So mountains are an important geographic feature in the Bible. Lots of important things happen at mountains, and it starts here in Eden. So you got the coming together of the rivers, and I really like James Jordan's take on this about the Pishon and the Gihon. So because we know where the Tigris and the Euphrates are, because those are still around. The flood changes geography, but based on these descriptions here, and again, biblical geography isn't my strong suit, but he's like, this is probably the Jordan and the Nile. And I love it because it's like you've got four of the most important rivers in all of human history. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right there, beginning in Genesis. So you got a mountain and you got rivers. And again, you can trace so many things in the Bible through this geographic lens. But I mean, right away you just go straight to Calvary. It's like it's a mountain, and out of Christ's side flows a river of living water. Jesus will say in John 7. So
yeah. So you have this this pattern that's set up in the garden. Life with God is on the mountain, and life flows from the mountain. Right. So presumably, we get this description of where there's gold. Gold of that land is good. This is going to be, as you exercise dominion, you're going to go and get the gold, right? God loves gold, and he wants you to put it to good use, right? So, but the source and origin of life is up there on the mountain at the root of the rivers. Right?
Yeah. That's why we're drawn to gold, right? Because it's beautiful. Like, we should be innately drawn to the beautiful that God has designed. Because intrinsically, like, you think about gold, it can make jewelry, but like it only has value because we assign value. That's how we talk about money, right? But it seems to be actually no, God likes gold, which is why it has value, and we've internalized that whether or not we realize it.
Yeah, there seems to be more going on than meets the eye, because we have some inherent sense of its scarcity, and its usefulness, right? That is across history and across cultures, right? It's pretty common, pretty universal, right? Yeah. Huh.
Have you?
Then I'm thinking about how you get, what is it? Jesus says, "Out of his heart will flow streams of living water." Is this in John 4, right, with the Samaritan woman?
No, John 7, Feast of Booths.
Oh yeah, there we go. Okay.
It's on the last day.
Which is he quoting or deriving something from the Proverbs? Is it Proverbs? Yeah, as the scripture has said. Where does that come from? Out of his heart will flow rivers of living water.
I do have a note that so the Buchs of Koth, which isn't canonical for us, but what just means booths, describes these water ceremonies that happen at the Feast of Booths. So perhaps he's playing upon that extra Jewish tradition here.
Sure, that could be it. I'm just checking my Nestle Island, because I remember reading this somewhere in Psalms or Proverbs, I think. Just real quick here. Isaiah 43, Proverbs 18, 4. That's what it is. But part of the point in observing this would be that God gives himself as the. No, that's not it. Shoot, forget about it. But
all right.
We got in the garden this pattern established, and then what Jesus is offering is in him that you become incorporated, so that your heart is like his heart. Your heart becomes like the heart that was pierced with the spear, out of which came flowing water and blood. Right?
Yeah. I mean, so this is the crazy thing about John 3 with this conversation with Nicodemus. So we're talking about this like union that we have with Christ. So, and Jesus speaks about being born of the water and the Spirit. And he says in verse 8, John 3, "The wind blows where it wishes," and he's talking about the Spirit, "and you hear its sound, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes." And here's the key: "So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit." So he's talking about the Spirit, but then he says, but it's also like that with those who are born of the Spirit. Isn't being a Christian like it's the most wonderful thing in the world?
Yeah. That's right. That's just connecting me to when I was thinking about Daniel, about how the breath blows across the water and disturbs the water, and the beasts come out of the water. Well, what is that? What is that breath? Right? It's the church going out. It's the Christians who are proceeding and riling up the nations.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we get uncomfortable with charismatics, and I think rightly so. But do you think like we're too quick to dismiss them? So like I get uncomfortable with this when people are like, the Spirit told me to do that, and I know that there's danger in that, and that makes me uncomfortable. But it's also like, do we discount like how the Spirit makes us move as well. I mean, so just think about your work as a pastor. Like there are things that you could have never predicted would have happened to you, like on a daily basis, right? Like opportunities that come up with for you to, do your work as a pastor, as a shepherd, right? Sharing the word of God. And the only way to describe it is it's like the wind. Like I can try to harness it a little bit, but we know how wind farms work. But I'm just going where the Spirit kind of sends me, just like Philip in the book of Acts.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. It's certainly in those kind of inexplicable cases, but it's interesting to me that we also tend to write it off, even in cases where you can like connect a series of events, but it's actually so clearly the answer to prayer and the Holy Spirit by like provoking you to do whatever it is that you thought you should do. It's like so like somebody prays for this person, and they tell me about this person they're praying for, and so I go and talk to this person. It's like, well, God answered their prayer. It happened, It's like,
oh, sure, yeah. Oh, that's that's great.
The miraculous things are the as they say, the God moments, or it's a God thing, right? You don't need those, but they do happen, and it's glorious,
I mean, I believe what Paul says, that like we all have our being like in and through, like it's all God, right? Like, and we're not pantheistic about it, obviously, right? That's a big error that needs to get addressed. But yeah, we're so cynical sometimes.
Well, I have thought about it in that way. This might sound hokey, but I have thought like if suppose there were like charismatic manifestations, right? So somebody has put to practice James's instructions and anointing the sick, and people are just getting healed, right? So we're doing this, laying hands, anointing people, they're getting healed. Faith would not be surprised by that. Like, it would not count it as something shocking or unbelievable, precisely because faith believed it. And so in that sense, it's like, it's not something that you'd be kind of out of character if you were drawing attention to it. If you were like saying, isn't this amazing? It's like a snake oil salesman, right? Like, what, you don't have to sell it, and you're not surprised by it because you expected it to happen. You expected it to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's like you pray for something and then God says yes. It's like, did you not believe Jesus when he said, "Seek and you will find"? Right.
So this has been something I've tried to build more into my habits of prayer, to pray more frequently for things. We've talked about this before, for things that are like I can discern easily whether or not in what way the prayer has been answered, let's say, right? So to pray more frequently for them, so that I can look back over the interval. If I pray for this every 2 hours or every 6 hours or whatever, I can look back over the interval, and I can see how God has answered the prayer, and then acknowledge that, as opposed to just waiting until the next time I think I need to pray for it, and imagining that God hadn't answered my prayer in the intervening time.
Oh yeah, that's great. So one thing that Reinhold Pieper says in his homiletics, and maybe I've just been a bad pastor for 5 years. I don't know if probably somebody told me to do this and I just hadn't done it. But he's like, after the sermon, make sure you pray that what you preach to the people, the Spirit like gets across to them, and like they believe it. So like pray before the sermon and after the sermon. And I pray before the sermon, but I hate to admit it, but I've forgotten to pray after the sermon that the Spirit would work.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's been the remedy for me when I start kind of ruminating over what I said in my sermon, wondering what's happening with it. It's just quit wondering and ask. Right?
That's right. And then the work happens. Parable of the seed in Mark, right? You don't know how it grows. But, sometimes it's there. It's springtime. We're going to get the weeds coming through the sidewalk pretty soon. And I always see it, and I'm like, how in the world is this grass growing in between the sidewalk cracks? Right? But that's how it works. That's how the gospel works sometimes. It's like, and you're going to have to transplant it, right? Parable of the sower, get it in some good soil. But, I mean, growth can happen in some pretty wild places.
Yeah. Yeah, it all serves to confound the flesh, and it's so good, that. And when you realize more and more just how 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 much in rebellion you live against God. Just like take any of the pastoral situations that arise where you want to fix it, you want to do something about it, you have an outcome in mind, and so you're strategizing in order to obtain that outcome, and it's completely, for one thing, it's folly for you to determine the outcome. What would be the good outcome, and also folly to imagine that it's going to happen because of any particular thing that you did. I'm thinking about John 6 for the fourth Sunday in Lent. We read it on Monday, and I love it because Andrew goes. So first Jesus asks Philip, "Where are we going to buy bread to feed so many?" And Philip starts doing the math. So I'm convinced now that this is a text about pastors. Right? It starts doing the math and comes up with a number, and even that number is not big enough, and he knows it, right? Whereas Andrew comes along, and he's quite honest about the circumstances. He's like, this is what we've got. And I hear in his question, what are these among so many? I hear in his question, okay, I recognize the extreme limitations here, and you're gonna have to do this.
Yeah, that's great. So again, yeah, it all starts with God, right? Like he gave you those 5 loaves and 2 fish to begin with, and so it's going to be enough, like for whatever task he would have you do.
Right. He wants the loaves and the fish, and you don't understand why he wants them because it doesn't look like enough, but he's gonna do it.
Right. Oh, that's great. This has been encouraging to my faith, David. You actually encouraged me. Good.
Yes.
Good.
All right.
Good for you.
Jewels in my crown. That's what I'm aiming at.
That's good. What? Was there something else I was going to say about Genesis 2? Probably. It was probably the most brilliant thing I had thought of all day, and it's going to escape me. But that's perfectly okay. You got any thoughts?
I think we covered everything that was on the docket. We could say something here about the task that before giving Adam his wife, God gives Adam this task of naming all of the creatures, which is not just the children's story Bibles are always given short shrift to these things. It's like the story Bible's about the flood. Imagine that it's about naming the animals or saving the animals, right? Or the story Bible stories are like, isn't this curious? Look at all these funny creatures. But this is what would you say? This is part and parcel of Adam's exercise of dominion, is giving things names, and names are not just arbitrary, but they have to do with the essence of a thing, right? So giving them names and governing them, right? So you control them with their name. When you call a thing by its name, you control it.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I mean, we see this with biblical names all the time, right? Like, so if you know what the name means, you kind of know what's going to happen in the story, right? So yeah. Abigail's husband, Nabal, right, and which means fool or idiot. So like, if you're reading the story, it's like, oh, here comes this guy named Fool. Wonder how this one's going to go. Right. And he's foolish. Now, I agree. Like, his parents probably didn't name him that, but it's very telling that the Bible calls him that, right? So you're exactly right. It's like naming a thing. You've got the authority over that person. So same thing. Yeah, same thing. If I know your name and we're in public, I can get your attention.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Same thing with the name of God, right? So when we get to this is Genesis 6, right? It's then that they began to call on the name of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and
yeah,
that's talking about like fundamental things or primary things. So the commandments, you got respecting God's name, keeping God's name holy. You also have your name and mine protected in the 8th commandment, right? So these names are dignified. They have a sanctity to them that is worthy of protection. That's what the commandments do. They protect these things. Our names are lower than God's name, right? What is it? From which every family is named, right? So we derive our names from God. And then shocking of the same character as Jesus handing over his body and blood is that God he gives you his name to use, right? He says, "Here, you can
Right.
have it." Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Like our last name is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. There's another naming story that I love. You know, Gideon does all his great deeds of faith, and then and they want to make him king, and he's like, "I'm not going to be king," and then he names his kid Abimelech. My dad is the king.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Yeah. So yeah, again, like how soon did Adam and Eve sin? It's like how soon did it take Gideon to realize he actually did want to be the king?
Right.
Because in the
exactly.
biblical text, it's like it's like a verse.
Yes.
Doesn't take long. He's like he does the George Washington thing first. He's like, no, I don't want to be the king, but then like George is like, no, actually call me King George.
Yes. That's right. I've got a guy in Bible class who, when we go over these stories, and he's always like, "How pathetic! How pathetic!" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the diagnosis."
I love I love that emotional reading of the Bible, because like sometimes you ask people to read the Bible in class, and it's so it's so dry. So like I was reading 1 Corinthians 11 with a guy this morning, and Paul's talking about people getting drunk before the Lord's Supper, and in the ESV it's great because he goes, "What?" exclamation point.
That's good.
It's like you can tell he's it's like this is crazy, guys. What?
Mm-hmm.
Not even a question mark. You want to talk to me about what grinds your gears about C.S. Lewis? What Narnia book did you just read?
Yeah, so the seventh in order of composition, as well as the last in the chronology, the last battle. So we've been going over these with the homeschool kids, and to this point, I've just I'm enthralled with them, and I really like the story. I've read them before, although I don't think I read the last battle for whatever reason. So this is my first time through it, and the theology that Lewis is espousing tends to be focused on anthropology, right? So he had a lot to say about human weaknesses, right, as well as providence. So Aslan's providence, this is good, and prayer. But in the last book, he's offering a critique of syncretism. So there's a false god, Tash, and there's Aslan, and the unrighteous are merging them together. They're saying they're the same thing, right? And so they're calling it Tash, they're combining the names together. Tashlan, I think is what they say. Okay, so the burr in my saddle comes when, and this is no surprise, I don't think. There's a fellow in the afterlife, in the day of judgment, who's been a devotee of Tash, the false god. And he's not just a false god, but he's vile. He commands his followers to do wicked things. This guy comes and is coming before the judgment with trepidation because he says, "I've been this follower of Tash my whole life." And Aslan says to him, essentially, "I count all of your service to Tash as service to me." Because anybody who kind of with integrity worships their god following the dictates of their conscience. So now we're sounding like Lumen Gentium. We're sounding like the Roman Catholic position on the salvation of the noble pagans, right? If you vowed oaths in my name, in the name of Tash, in the name of that false god, but you sincerely intended to follow through, I count your obedience or your faithfulness as obedience to me. And it's a pity because it obscures the merits of Christ, and the what would it be? What do I want to say? Like the unique authority of God, right? He does not share his throne, and your offerings to false gods are faithless, and so they avail nothing before God's throne.
Yeah, that's troubling, man, to say the least. I mean, heck of a storyteller, right? And we've got a lot of nice things to say about Lewis, obviously, but that's like, so it reminds me, does he do this in Mere Christianity, or like when he talks about good and evil, he uses the word, is it Tao, Tao,
the Tao, yeah,
or the Tao, right? And which is like that's an Eastern concept, right?
Yeah.
And that makes me a little bit uncomfortable, just adopting that language. Now I know what he means by it, right? He means a binary, right? Like every good has got to have its evil, so there is some merit to it. But as you were describing that, I'm thinking of Gideon again. It's like as soon as he dies, they hoard after the Baals, and it says they made Baal Berith their god, and Berith is the word for covenant. So they merge the religion of the covenantism with Yahweh with Baal. I mean, that's exactly what that sounds like. It's like externally it looks like you're kind of worshiping the true God, except you're calling him Baal. Like that's so bad.
Right. Well, and that's the slippery slope that Israel slides down, right? So Jeroboam institutes this new mode of worship. It's like we're not worshiping Baal yet, but we're going to shift everything. So not in Jerusalem, but in Bethel. We'll have the golden calves, just to help you out. And we're not going to have the festivals in the 7th month. We'll have them in the 8th month. We won't have Levites as priests. We'll have, we'll appoint our own people, right? So that's the first step. And it looks. I mean, come on. What's the big deal? And this is the thing with the way that Lewis describes it, and the way it's described. I was looking it up in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Here's how they put it. They say that the affirmation that outside the church there is no salvation. Okay, so that's their affirmation, and by that they mean Christ is the source of salvation, and Christ is present in the church. Okay, this affirmation is not aimed at those who, through no fault of their own, do not know Christ and his church. Right. So, on the one hand, it's just absolute nonsense, but it's also feels so good, doesn't it? It's just like, yeah, it's cozy.
So let me get this straight. So the person who worships a false god his entire life is better off than a Lutheran in the pre-Vatican II.
Yes. Okay.
mindset.
And this is that's Erasmus. Erasmus says that. He's like, the Greeks are better than you guys. He says the Greeks are getting to heaven before you.
This chaps me so hard because I don't know anybody who's ever said this, but this always gets brought up. This is the joke. The Lutherans think they're the only people in heaven, and it's like, man, if you understood our dogma, nobody who ever actually read the Book of Concord would ever say that, because salvation comes through faith in Jesus Christ, right? It's plain a day. It's not subscribing to the Lutheran confessions, right? It's believing in Christ. That's actually the Catholic position, right? You got to submit to the Pope, unless you worship a different god. It's like,
yes, that's right.
This is so bad.
Well, so the thing that the inconsistency in Lewis and in the Roman Catholic Church and in Erasmus is that false gods don't command righteousness. So Tash is vile. The false god is vile, and that's why at first the good characters are so surprised. They're like, what does light have to do with darkness? What can Aslan and Tash have to do with each other? Because Tash commands evil deeds. And the idea that you could be a devotee, a true, you're following the dictates of your conscience, worshiping Baal or Moloch or Mammon, right? So you're like, with all the integrity in my heart and with a clean conscience, I'm following the dictates of Mammon, and therefore I'm going to get to heaven. It's just like, it's because of your devotion to this false god that you're not going to heaven. Because of your sincere devotion to this false god, you're not going to heaven.
Yeah, well, we need to be super clear on this, because I don't know if it's Fox News' fault or what, and I don't really feel like talking about Israel today, but we kind of got to, because there's this notion that people think that people in Israel are going to get to heaven based on the old covenant. Right, and it's crazy, because Paul is so clear on this. He's like faith comes through Jesus Christ. My own people have rejected Christ, and Paul's great. He shows his compassion. He's like, I would willingly go to hell for these people if they could be believe in Christ too, right? So you see the compassion there. But where do we get this idea that there's a different standard for salvation for different people? It's always been the same, and Hebrews 11 makes this so clear, right? Salvation comes through faith. It's that way for the people in the Old Testament, and it's that way for the people in the New. We're not actually saved by a different way. It's just the timing is different. They look forward to it. We look back behind to the cross.
Yeah. That just came up in Isaiah 7 last night. We're doing a little bit of time in Isaiah. The very end of 7. If you do not, what does it say? Or end of the messianic portion. If you are not firm in faith, you will not be firm at all. That's yeah. Or Habakkuk, the righteous will live by faith, right? Yeah. So that's, I mean, historically, this is kind of a novel thing. The idea that there are different paths, that God has just different dispensations, right? This is the fault of the Schofield Reference Bible. Is that's the root of it?
I don't know if that's the root. That's kind of
Okay.
That's cute. I mean, I certainly think that probably plays a part in our American understanding of things. Yeah, you're probably a little bit right.
It fits hand in glove with Erasmus. Again, I'm going to ride this horse for a little while yet, but wanting to let God off the hook, right? So Luther says right at the beginning of the Bondage of the Will, he's like, yeah, don't be deceived. It takes faith to believe in a God who so apparently rejoices in the destruction of the wicked, while at the same time, saying that he's merciful and kind, right?
Well, I mean, this is the paradox, right? So Ezekiel 33, or is it 32, somewhere in that region? Like, he's like, don't misunderstand me. Like, I don't get pleasure in punishing the wicked. Like, I want to save them. Jesus says this. He's like, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how willing I would have gathered you under my wings, just as a hen, right? But you were not willing. I think it's more troubling to believe in a God who doesn't have hell set up, because that means there's no justice.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's good. Okay, shift gears. Tell me what's on your mind these days.
Well, this is the longest I ever spent on a book that wasn't the Bible. I think it was worth it. I just finished Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. It took me a month and a half. I read War and Peace in a month. So, like this took 50% more of the time than War and Peace did, just to give you an idea of the scope of the novel.
So that was because of its length, or because it was difficult?
Both. So the Russians are very easy to read. They're wordy. They have a lot to say, but you read a sentence and you know what they're saying. Now there's some philosophical things that they go and they're like, oh man, that was really good, I want to write that down. But they're not trying to disorient you on the page. David Foster Wallace is trying to mess with your brain, so that's why it took so long. Very unsettling, very relevant though, because if you had to sum up the book in one word, it's about addiction. So you've got tons of things going on. If you're looking for a challenge to read, I would recommend it. He finishes it in 96, but this is so relevant for today because there's this film called Infinite Jest that the main character's dad produced, and once people start watching it, like, they physically can't stop. All they want to do is watch this film, and it completely destroys their lives. And I mean, if you can't see the analogy between like the smartphone and this, right? Like I can't help you, right? Same thing. Like, we are addicted to entertaining. And who's the guy who said we're entertaining ourselves to death? Kind of an idea.
Neil Postman. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Neil Postman. Yeah. Medium is the message. Is that right?
That's Marshall McLuhan. Neil Postman is amusing ourselves to death, but yeah, he borrows from McLuhan.
Okay. Yeah. All these Medium guys, I'm getting them mixed up. But yeah. So the storyline's great. It's intriguing. He's funny. He's hilarious, so it's worth reading for that. But it also kind of leaves you hopeless, and you see this in the person. You see this in the person of the author, because he commits suicide tragically, about a decade after he finishes the book, and so you kind of get the sense he was writing about himself, which is difficult, and it really just made me want to be like, man, I wish that guy would have heard the gospel and believed it, because that would have been the fix to all of these things. I don't know. You see this a lot with your people. I mean, maybe not like your people, but like, people are addicted to all sorts of stuff, whether it's smartphones or alcohol, drug. Like, there's a lot of drug use in the book. Sex, kind of a thing. There's different characters like that. Of course, the answer is always the same.
That's really good. That connects with something I was thinking about this week. I got a couple of books to teach kids about avoiding pornography. They're called this book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and it teaches this kind of method for, like, what do you do when you see a bad picture? How do you identify a bad picture, and what do you do? And it's great. It's great stuff. You can turn away, and for the older kids, it gives some instruction about, the brain science, that you've got a feeling portion of your brain and a thinking portion of your brain, and you can. So this is where, to your point about addiction, it's at the same time kind of gives some agency, but it's also rather hopeless, because you can acknowledge that you've got this feeling portion of your brain that gets triggered, and the affection center is designed to be aroused by the sight of certain things, especially in boys, right? And so if the thinking portion of your brain knows that about the feeling portion of your brain, you can get out ahead of it, and you can build in habits, and you can train yourself to redirect your thoughts. Like this is good, solid, just like self-discipline kind of advice. But it never acknowledges the fact that there's sin. That you're not merely a victim of the feeling portion of your brain, which is kind of animal portion of your brain, and the thinking portion of your brain is evidently great, really good, so that they say it's like exercising muscles. The more you practice this, the better you will get at it, without any terminus. And there's no remedy for when you fail, right? There's no remedy. It's hopeless. So it's actually, I think, on the one hand, it's very helpful for just being honest about it, but at the same time, it's a setup for despair, because there's no way out.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, because you're setting them up. It's like, yeah, you want to. It's a very Stoic way of thinking, right? Yeah. So this is why the Stoics are so attractive, because they can help you with self-control, right? But then what happens when you lose control? Then
you don't want to control yourself anymore, right?
Right. Yeah. It's a spiritual problem, right? So It's got to be, the answer's got to be the Holy Spirit. Yeah.
So do you see the use then for a book like Infinite Jest? Do you see it useful for laying bare the state of humanity, or is there more use beyond that?
Well, certainly for laying base the despair of humanity. I see, like, philosophically, I think it's a very postmodern novel, meaning there's all these interconnections between everything. So this is what the postmoderns like to do, right? Everything's a reference to everything else. Very Family Guy-ish kind of a thing, you know what I mean? Like there's always the flashbacks, and that's what Family Guy got made fun of for. Like the jokes had nothing to do with the plot, right? But it was just all self-referential. The problem is it's not tied to anything. So like I'm, watching the Super Bowl, and you see the advertisements that come on TV, and there was a really obscure one with Nick Offerman, famous for being in Parks and Rec, the the manly man with the mustache. So my wife and I like the show. So we got the joke, but I wonder like how many baby boomers were watching this and they're like, what? Like that was so weird. Like what was that a reference to? You know what I mean? So, I feel this way like when watching any kind of TV. It's like, I'm kind of depressed that I get that reference, like.
This is great though. That fits so well with you remember Lightheart's book Deep Exegesis, and he describes it as like getting the joke. This is what's glorious about reading the Scripture. Okay, and what's why it has staying power is because the jokes are rooted in objective, fundamental, universal, divine things that are not going to go away.
Right. Yeah, that's great. It's not that like references are bad, because obviously the Bible does it, right? And this is what really grinds my gears is we started calling it intertextuality as if it was some kind of new academic pursuit. It's like I thought it was just like reading the Bible as a coherent unit. That's how we've always done it. And then like the 19th century Germans come along, and it's like we introduce all these new academic disciplines.
It's like you're having conversation with your wife as you're in the course of your marriage, and then you like, okay, today I'm going to do some intertextual analysis of you, my sweetheart, as opposed to being like, hey, remember that one time when we went to the nonsense.
That's a man. I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but I don't think I can share.
Fair enough.
That's good. Yeah. So Shrek's the perfect example because that's the example that Lightheart uses. The movie's great. I love it. Like I get a lot of mileage out of it because at this point, who hasn't seen the movie? So like I did this a couple of years ago when Parable of the Good Samaritan. Like my opener was like parables are like onions. They have layers. And it's like there's layers to that joke because there's Shrek, but then you can talk about the layers of the parable. So like, yeah, Shrek is great, and the more we can reference that, it just needs to be tied to something, and that obviously that thing is reality, which would be Christ.
Yeah. What do you call it when the jokes are all self-referential and there is no mooring to reality? I mean, it is vacuous. It's like it's a kind of is that do you suppose? I'm just thinking about the kinds of experiences that people have. Like, I don't know whether this would be accurate or not, but I imagine that is a bit like what psychedelic, hallucinogenic kind of experiences are, right? So profound. Yeah. It's profound in and of itself, like, or within the scope of that experience, but it has no connection to reality otherwise,
Right. Yeah. This is why people say like, I found myself kind of a thinking. And then so this is why you eliminate God. You have to do drugs to have meaning in life because that becomes your new transcendent reality. And unfortunately it's in yourself. Great, what's his name? Francis Schaeffer quote. So he's like, liberal theology isn't tied to reality because they deny the historicity of the resurrection. So his quote is, you can do liberal theology or you can do drugs and you end up in the same place.
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
I love that guy. Well, hey, this was great. We got you got anything else to say?
I think that's all I got. Talk about Genesis 3 next time. That'll be good.
Hey,
fall into sin.
It's a pretty big chapter in the Bible.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
I like your take that you can run everything back through Genesis 1 through 3. I think that's solid. So, all right, I'm gonna hit stop.
Hey.